Hello fairy souls, it is Niina. You're watching Fairy Chamber channel. I thought to do something a bit different today and talk to you about the Divine Feminine and what all the things I have learned from Divine Feminine, from Finnish mythology and from Finnish Pantheon. It's a lovely day today, as you can see. So, in the first glance you might think that is there Divine Feminine in Finnish Pantheon? It tends to be pretty much all around the male deities at first glimpse, but indeed there is a very strong core among Finnish female goddesses, and I see that even among many Finnish deities there is male deities, there is Divine Feminine within them as well. Of course, because we are all humans, we have both female and male aspects within us, no matter which gender we are or how we define ourselves. So I think the first thing to understand why it, in first glimpse, the Finnish spirituality and Finnish paganism might seem a bit male-oriented, especially if you read New Kalevala or some mythology from the Iron Age. It seems to be quite male-oriented, but in the origin in the beginning, the mythology, it was more gender neutral, and it was more about both entities, both male and female. But to understand how come this development has happened, you need to understand the history of pagan Finland and Finnish paganism. And when we go back in time to the first inhabitants of what is now known as Finland, we could say that those were different Sami tribes about 10,000 years ago. That is when the first inhabitants arrived after the ice age, and the ice was melting, so the people were moving more and more north, and then other tribes coming after them. And the Sami culture in the beginning, it was very male dominant. It was based on hunting. They were hunter-gatherers. Think about 10,000 years ago, people were hunter-gatherers, at least in the North Arctic areas. And at that time, the places where farming started, that was like in the what is now known as Middle East and so on. So people were still in the hunter-gatherer state in the Arctic areas in way more north. Also, when it came to shamanism and the belief system that people had, that was really animistic, shamanistic. Most of the shamans were men, or in some cultures it was a taboo if a woman was a shaman, and this is quite common in Arctic cultures, that shaman was a male. And then in rest part of the Europe, it was believed that woman was the one who possessed magic more easier. And when we go to more north, it was believed that men were the one who possessed magic more natural, and they were the one who had the right to connect with the spirit. So this is also why in Finland, or what is now known as Finland and what is now known as Estonia, and also in many parts of Russia, during the witch hunts in the 17th century, majority of the witches that were killed were men, when in other parts of the world they tend to be women. It's an interesting fact. And when it comes to the Sami mythology, that varies a lot because there are so many different Sami tribes, it tends to be quite male-oriented as well. The women had their own special roles, and men had their own special roles as providers and bringing food and all that. Then women's job was more around home and that kind of things. It wasn't all that bad. Women had rights to own reindeers, for example, in Sami cultures in Finland and in Sweden. But overall, the different deities that are in the Sami culture, the female deities, in the beginning, they were really linked to shamanism very much. They were all about death. They were linked to the mysteries of the underworld. And later on, when the cultures have grown, the Sami goddesses, they got some other roles. They become more around birth. So they are these starters of the life and the death. They are really related to this kind of human growth. In that sense, they are very shamanistic deities. So these 4 deities are Akka, who was the Sami goddess of the earth, and then there was her 3 daughters, Yuksakka, Sarakka and Uksakka, all related to birth and death, and Uksakka especially is related to shamanism because she is the gatekeeper. And Matterakka, she is also the gatekeeper. Yuksakka, she is the female protector of boys, and Sarakka, she is the female protector of girls. So they are all linked to life and death. And Uksakka, she was the guardian of the home and guardian of the human until she would move away from home. So in that sense, there is this kind of nurturing aspect within Sami mythology as well, and the Sami pantheism, Pantheon. There was Horakallis and Biekkalmai, but the most important god of the Sami people was Radien, who was the highest god of the skies, and he was god for the both sexes to worship. So the culture was quite male-oriented. Then, about 7,000 years ago, farming and agriculture arrived to Finland, and it is believed that it arrived together with some Baltic tribes that came from what is now known as Estonia, and then later on there became more Baltic tribes from southern Europe, and then there have been people coming from east and from the west, from what is now known as Sweden and from Russia. So we are like big cocktails. But when the farming arrived, that also brought new deities to Finnish Pantheon, which at that time probably was not Finnish Pantheon just yet, but it was developing to become its own Finnish Pantheon, with these people coming from different directions. But when farming arrived, it brought this new maternal energy from Baltic countries, and if you are familiar with Baltic mythology, it is quite female-oriented. It's very matriarchal, unlike many other mythologies in the world that are more patriarchal. The Baltic mythology is very matriarchal, and the highest goddesses in the Baltic mythology are Sole, the sun goddess, and Niina, the earth goddess. So the cults of these two arrived to what is now known as Finland, and they became Finnish deities, or they transformed into Finnish deities. And this is why Finnish mythology, it is very shamanistic. It is quite equal what it comes to, is it patriarchal paganism or is it matriarchal paganism? It is quite humanistic paganism, because you can find male and female counterpart for everything, and then you can find male gods who have no female counterpart and female goddesses who have no male counterpart. So it is very interesting mixture of a very first fundamental profound Baltic mythology with different Sami, Finno-Ugrian shamanism and Arctic shamanism. So this is why it makes Finnish mythology very, very fascinating, and this brought a new level to the divine feminine within Finnish mythology. In a quick glance on Finnish mythology, Ukko might appear to be the highest of the gods, and Ukko is a Finnish god of thunder and god of the skies and god of human relations and all kinds of things, and Ukko was worshipped all over what is now known as Finland, and also in the Lapland of Finland, the Sami people, they had their thunder god called as Ukko, and the same god, his name was Radian among other tribes, and he had many different names, so in a way it was a parallel god, and you can find this parallel god among pretty much all cultures in Europe, but also among Finno-Ugrian tribes in Russia, and among Samoyedi tribes and Eurasian tribes. So this idea of thunder god is very widespread. There's Taranis, Theodotes, Zeus, Thor, you can find them, all over. And then in Finnish mythology, Ukko had a counterpart called Akka, and she's also called Rauni. I think I used the word Akka here. I don't know which word was in more common use. I guess it depends which part of the country you lived. And Finnish language is known that there's several different words for one specific thing. That is why among our gods and goddesses you can find many different names for one specific god or goddess. So Akka was also known as Rauni, and she was also as Pohytar, Manutar, Manun Eukko, Manun Akka, and Ma means earth in Finnish, so she was the earth goddess, the Mother Earth in Finnish mythology. And the thing is, it is believed that when the Baltic tribes arrived, and as the time went by, they got mixed together with the people who were already living what is now known as Finland, and so the mythology developed from there. So we get this kind of very equal amount of male and female divinities to Finnish mythology. Yeah, Ukko and Akka, for example, and they represent the fertility myth. Ukko is the thunder father god, and Akka is the Mother Earth. But when Christianity arrived to Finland in the early Middle Ages, during the Reformation, the Catholic Church, they really started to destroy the cult of Akka that there was. So this is why from Finnish Kalevala poetry and all these ballads and chants that we have, you cannot really find poems from Akka that much, because those poems, they were collected in the 19th century and written down back then. So compared to many other mythologies and pagan customs in the past, Finnish mythology and paganism, it was also quite female-oriented in many ways. When we think about, for example, neighbor countries, Sweden and Norway, the culture was more masculine, and yes, there is very powerful female goddesses there as well. But often they've also been given these kind of warrior characteristic and masculine characteristics as well, which is quite interesting. And when it comes to Finnish paganism, it is really more nature-based and not that much about human aspects. We think about the deities in different deities in ancient Greece. They were all about human relations and human psyche and all that, but then Finnish mythology, it is about human psyche, but it has more emphasis on nature and nature worship, which is very, very important, I think, and that is very, very fascinating. But when we think about the habit culture of the pagan times in Finland, for example, or in ancient Finland, father was not necessarily the head of the household. If a man died, the widow became the head of the household first, before the oldest son. And it was possible that if a young man wanted to propose a girl, they might ask hand from the mother and not from the father necessarily. father wasn't there. So that's something that was quite common in ancient Finland, but then in Sweden and Norway it was always the man who was the head of the house and not the woman. And you would go to the father to ask the hand of the lady you wish to marry. I think it's quite interesting. And if you have read Kalevala, different versions of Kalevala, there's several different versions. The grooms, they always there ask hands from the mothers, not really from the fathers, which is quite interesting. And there's lots of mothers in Kalevala poems that don't really have like husbands there. Then in Finnish mythology there's lots of groups of 4 goddesses or 3 goddesses, not necessarily like maiden, mother, crone aspects, but just these groups of 3 or 4 goddesses that represent different things. Also, nature is very heavily personified, so everything in nature has its own spirit or elf or guardian, whatever you want to call it. And nature spirit and nature spirit can be a gender neutral, or it can be a man or a woman. Quite often in Finnish mythology the different tree spirits are female. We have Pohytar, and that is the spirit of the robot tree. Koivutar, the goddess or spirit of the birch tree, and so on. So they tend to be female. And then there is emus, but emu, it can be a man or a female or something from between. Emu is the first creature of the species, the creator of species. So for example in Finnish mythology the emu of the cats is an elf. And Käreiter is the goddess emu of foxes, and Kati is the goddess emu of the trees, and so on. So there we have also both female and male spirits. Some of these groups of 3 could be the daughters of Loki, and Loki is also known as Sloviatar, and she is the goddess of witchcraft, goddess of North. And when Christianity arrived to Finland, Loki was the goddess who was very heavily demonized. And then we think about the most well-known Finnish goddesses, Akka, Miriki, Vellama and Loki. Loki's daughters, they could be seen as this kind of group of 3 deities or 3 weavers of destiny, or one of them. You know, they are very common in European mythologies, the group of 3 women who weave the destiny. But the daughters of Loki, they are more similar to these daughters of Akka in Sami mythology that are related to birth and death. Juksakka, Sarakka and Uksakka. Loki's daughters are Tuoni, Kalma and Surma. Tuoni was the spirit that took care of the passed away people who have died natural death. Kalma took care of those people who had died because of diseases, and Surma of those who died because of violence or who were murdered or things like that. So there we have a first group of 3. Loki herself is a goddess of witchcraft, goddess of the North, and she is the gatekeeper of the world of the living and world of the dead, and a ruler of the underworld. And unfortunately, if you think about European mythologies, all the goddesses who have been connected to death and magic and mysteries, they've all been demonized. So this is something that was done for Loki as well, and she's also known as Sloviatar and Louhetar. I need to make a video about her at some point. And what is very interesting about Loki is that there isn't any mentioned in any of the poems who is the father of the daughters. And it's also said that Loki had another bunch of children who were Tuuletar, Viimatar and Pakkanen. And Tuuletar is the goddess of the very hard wind, and Viimatar is the goddess of the cold wind. And we don't know if Pakkanen was a man or a female. It's a gender neutral word. Some poems tell that Pakkanen was a like young mischievous boy, and then some poems tell that it was a girl. I don't know. And then he also had 9 daughters, or who could also be 9 sons. Those were different diseases. So you can see how demonized this goddess was. And original role of Loki was to be the goddess of the moon, Kuutar, which is also something that I heavily link to the Sami mythology, where some poems tell that the daughter of the sun and the wife of the moon, they were sisters, and there's lots of variations on that myth, but it's very fascinating. Loki is very demonized goddess, as the same as the Sami goddess of the moon is as well. So then we have Akka, who was the Finnish goddess of the earth. She is also known as Rauni. That name is believed to become the Swedish word rön, which means the rowan tree. And rowan tree, it was a very sacred tree in Northern Europe back in the days. So Rauni is one of her names. But Akka, she is the goddess of the earth, but she is the goddess that provides life, goddess that gives everything to the earth, to the fields, the flowers, the trees, the essence of everything. And when we go to the Iron Age, we get a new name for this goddess, Iro Neito, the maiden Iro. And this is something that later on was transformed into Virgin Mary, because Iro and both Akka and Iro, they are seen as the world. The word Iro is one explanation for that, is that it comes from the old Finnish word Viro, which means the world, or which is like old Baltic word for the world. So actually Akka and Viro would both mean the world, and Iro would be the mother of the world. So in the mythology that comes from the Iron Age, that is the time when Finns had meetings with the Vikings and the other tribes a lot. So the Finnish tribes met the neighbor tribes a lot. So that is when we get lots of influence from Nordic mythology. And this starts the stories of Väinämöinen and heroic sagas in Finnish mythology. The stories from the Iron Age tell that Iro was the mother of Väinämöinen, Ilmarinen and Joukahainen, who are the heroes in different versions of Kalevala. And then when we go to the Reformation, Iro was turned into Virgin Mary. And if you read the stories of Väinämöinen, he made lots of miracles. He's like a wonderful Finnish shaman that everyone hyped about back in the day. So his miracle works, some of them were quite similar to the stuff that Jesus did. So in that sense, when the church fathers were trying to convert Finns to Christianity, they changed Iro to Virgin Mary, and Ukko naturally became the Christian father god, when it was the god of the skies basically who was in control of everything. They just switched the name of Ukko to the Jumala, the Christian god. So that is how the Reformation switched pagan gods to one Christian god who had a mother who had also magical abilities. So that was that story in a nutshell. But this is how the cult of Akka and Iro as well was completely washed over from Finnish paganism, which is quite sad, at least in my eyes. But then I do think that some of those goddesses that have been really like been stuck in Finnish paganism for all these thousands and thousands of years, Miriki, and Vellama, and Loki as well, in a way they're all representations of Akka, the world goddess, the Mother Earth. Miriki is the goddess of forest and the goddess of hunting. Her husband was Tapio, who was the god of the forest, and Miriki, she's one of my favorite Finnish goddesses. She's the goddess of abundance, she's goddess of good luck, she's also goddess of hunting, and she's also goddess of wounded animals and healing, and she's like goddess of herbal medicine, all kinds of cool things, and she's goddess of wild forest and free nature. And then her husband Tapio, he is the god of the forest, and you could say that the forest, both good and the bad aspects of the forest, they all exist in Tapio. It is the same with Miriki. She has another name called Kurikki, and Kurikki is a form of Miriki that punishes those people who misbehave in the forest. When Tapio as a god, when he has his like dark side on, it means those bad things that might happen in the forest, that people might get lost there, or that nighttime might frighten people who are wandering the forest and don't know where to go. So in a way, Finnish mythology is like very based on Finnish. It has its core in Finnish like human psyche, but also the surrounding nature and our relationship to the nature. Then we have Vellama, who is the goddess of the sea and water, and I do think she also has this kind of quality what Miriki has, because she can create massive storms, and then she can give fish to the fishermen, and she can take care of the lakes and all the mermaids and sea maidens and sea boys. They are all her children, and her husband is Ahti, who is the god of the sea and god of the fishermen. So in a way, all these gods, they have like dark side and they have their light side, same way as humans, but they are all like very created from their nature. They are born from the nature. We have another group of four, and this group is heavily based on Baltic mythology more than the Sami mythologies, and that has created these characters of Finnish mythology, and these are Päivätar, Kuutar, Otavatar, and in some cases Tähdetar. Päivätar is the goddess of the sun, and she is very similar to the goddess Sole in the Lithuania and Latvia. And in Finnish mythology, the day and the moon are sisters. Päivätar and Kuutar are sisters. Some stories tell that they are twin sisters, and they have a third sister also, Otavatar. I don't know if she's a little sister or a bigger sister. Otavatar is the goddess of the constellation of the big bear and the small bear. And in some cases, Otavatar, she's also known as Tähdetar, which is the goddess of the stars. And some stories tell that there are two different entities. I don't know, they might be both stars. Anyway, in Finnish mythology, Päivätar and Kuutar, they weave the thread of destiny of the people, which is very, very poetic. And goddess Päivätar, she is connected to Akka, so she might be actually counterpart of Akka as well, or parallel goddess to Akka. Then we have Miriki, who can be parallel goddess to Otavatar, because Miriki is connected to the bear, and bear was also one of the gods in Finnish Pantheon. And then we have Vellama, who is most likely connected to Kuutar, because the sea is of course connected to the moon and the tidal waves. This is all very fascinating. Also Loki, she is in many times connected to Kuutar, that she is maybe the old goddess of the moon. Maybe she's like proto-Finnish goddess of the moon before Kuutar became, or maybe they are one and the same entity. I don't know. It's very, very fascinating. And the list continues. There is also the female personifications for different directions. There is Pohytar, which is the goddess of the north, or personification of the north. And Pohytar, she is connected to the winter and death and darkness, nighttime. Then we have Etelätar, who is in some cases also connected to Akka, the earth goddess. Etelätar, she is connected to south. Etelä is south in Finnish, of course, and to warmth and to daytime. Then Lännetar, the goddess of the west, she is connected to west, to evening time, and fire as an element. And then we have Idätar, the goddess of the east. She is connected to the east and to springtime and fire, and to the sun rising, and also the wind. So there we have even more goddesses, female entities. There is lots of female energy when it comes to Finnish mythology. And when I talk about female energy, I don't think it is just meant to be preserved only for women, but it's preserved for everyone. I do think that because we've had this both male and female energies and deities so much within Finnish paganism in the old times, that has affected a lot in our subconscious. Of course, there was this long time period of mainstream Christianity that was ruled by a male god that was quite dominant and has been quite harmful in many ways for the human psyche, especially the time of Reformation in some areas of Finland more than others, like in Lapland, for example, the very heavily Laestadian movement and all that shit. That has been very harmful for many people and for many generations. So I do think that this equal relationship that there was between the male energies and the female energies, that it has had its effect on Finnish subconscious as well. You know, if we go more recent history, back to the past, Finland was one of the first countries in Europe where women get the right to vote, and overall in the Nordic countries are quite high when it comes to the men and female equality compared to many other countries, like for example the UK. I do think it's very important to preserve these stories of Finnish female deities and also understand the nurturing aspect that there has been also in the Finnish male deities, but also that in the Finnish female deities there has been the nurturing aspect and the dark aspect, but that has also occurred in the male deities. You know, Ukko, he was the father god, he was the god that women asked help when they wanted to get pregnant also, and he was a male god. He was a god of the shamans as well, and someone that people did seek help in every aspect of their lives. So in a way, Ukko had lots of female, what we might now perceive as female aspects, as well as with male aspects. I guess it depends how you define what is a male aspect and what is a female aspect. But then a good example of maiden mother crone could be Miriki, one of my favorite goddesses. I guess you could say that in Finnish Pantheon, Miriki would be my matron goddess. So within Finnish Pantheon, Miriki, she can appear as a young maiden who rides with a bear. There's been poems like that. She can be a nurturing mother in a blue cloak. Miriki is also one of those goddesses who was very heavily tried to transform into Virgin Mary. So that's why sometimes she also has a blue cloak. And simply because she was the goddess of the herd animals and herd people as well. So Miriki can also have the mother aspect, and she's the mother of several different nature spirits as well. And then there are also poems and stories that Miriki has appeared as an old woman wearing a bear cloth or something, and people have asked questions from this wise crone. So Miriki can have the maiden mother crone aspect. Same way as with Loki, who I think is very extremely misunderstood goddess in Finnish mythology. She is the goddess of the shamans, and this proves how the shaman can also be a woman, not just a man, like in Arctic cultures. Many times shamanism was only preserved for men, even though all the lifestyle of people was quite paganistic and people believed to different deities. The shamans and the spiritual rites in Arctic cultures, they were preserved only for men. And well, in some tribes in Russia, some Finno-Ugrian and Samoyed tribes, there are actually tribes where only women can be shamans, which I find very interesting. That like breaks the pattern. And there are also tribes that only worship a certain female deity. It's something I need to research more, but that also breaks the pattern. Loki, when we take her away from this demonizing aspects, when it comes to shamanism, that is always like gender neutral. The magic itself is gender neutral, but being the goddess of the moon, she is very linked to the emotions, and the female emotions that can be destructive, and it can also be healing. And well, that applies to male emotions as well. And when it comes to Miriki, she is also the goddess of hunting. So we have this kind of goddess that has these like a male contribute. She's the hunter. That is something that is traditionally in Western society seen as a male aspect, hunter aspect. And then we have a goddess that is the ruler of this white aspect within a woman, but then she's at the same time the nurturing aspect of the woman. And that's what Miriki represents. She can be the hunter and she can be the nurturing mother. So she is the white woman, and in a way she's also the tamed woman. So this is something that Finnish mythology has taught me about divine feminine, with all these different deities that I talked to you about, how within the divine feminine, among different gods and goddesses, there are these gender roles that overlap all the time. But Miriki, especially for me, she represents these different roles that women have, and Loki as well, and Akka and Vellama, all these goddesses. I think I have talked enough, so thank you for watching, guys. I will put links to the description box about these videos I've made about these specific gods and goddesses that I have mentioned in this video. So thank you very much for watching, guys. I will see you next time. Take care. Bye. Thank you for watching. If you're interested to learn more about Finnish mythology and folklore and ancient customs and beliefs, I have an 8-week online course called The Heart of Miriki, which is a deep dive into the world of Finnish mythology and all the different deities and legends. You can find more information about it on my website, fairychamber.com, and I will also add the links to the description. Have a great day, make good choices, and I will see you next time. Bye!